Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Pensacola. My name's Kate. I go by the pronouns she and her. I'm so happy to see you all here. Jack and I have been gone on a trip for a couple months, and always nice to come home to this wonderful family. Thank you. I have one announcement up here. There are 2 petitions for signing out there in the lobby. One is for clean water rights, and the other is abortion rights. So please take a moment and look at those papers and sign them if you are drawn to do that. I wanted to mention that next week we have a guest speaker coming. Her name is Magi Thromley, and she's going to be talking about a woman's perspective, and it should be a good service. I guess we're ready for the centering music.
We shall not bow down to racism. We shall not bow down to injustice. We shall not bow down to exploitation. I'm gonna stay.
I hope you enjoyed that song as much as I did when I was preparing and selected it for today. I'm going to do some opening words, and we did these words a few months back when I was also the speaker, and so some of you may remember, and I think everyone really enjoyed them, so we're going to try it again. The words are titled Be the Blessing You Already Are by Sarah Gibb Millsbaugh and John Gibb Millsbaugh, and they say this: in our religious tradition, it is not just ministers and religious professionals who have power to bless. Each of us has the power to bless another and to bless the world. Therefore, I invite everyone here to participate in this blessing. The words are ordinary words, but we make the blessing real through our shared intention. And so what I would ask you to do at your level of comfort is to reach out a hand or kind of gesture towards someone who's near you, maybe hold their hand or place a hand on their shoulder if they are comfortable and you're comfortable in doing so, and sort of form some physical connections between and among us here in the room together while I read out the words. As we have been blessed, so we bless one another to be a blessing. Breathe in, breathe out. This breath we share with all that breathes. Feel the love of the universe flowing through this community, into you, and out into the universe again. Let the love of all the universe, your love, flow outward to its height, its depth, its broad extent. You are more than you know, and more beloved than you know. Take up what power is yours to create safe haven, to make of earth a heaven. Give hope to those you encounter, that they may know safety from inner and outer harm. Be happy and at peace, healthy and strong, caring and joyful. Be the blessing you already are. That is enough. Blessed be. Amen. And those words are adapted from the Karaniya Metta Sutta, Sutta Nipata 1.6 of the Pali Canon.
Now, I'd like you to please join me, stand if you're willing and able, for the recitation of the covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. And now I'd like to invite the choir up to help us sing this new hymn, Draw the Circle Wide. The words will be up on the screen for you all to follow.
So we're going to do a time for all ages. This is a lovely story, pardon the pun, called Lovely, and the story is by Jess Hong. So the video is a reader reading the book, and it's particularly appropriate to have it up on the big screen because it's really all about the illustrations and how lovely they are.
Well, that was gosh darn lovely. I'd like to sing the children out. Please join us. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the spirit of love surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Freely have we received our gifts that minister to our needs of body and spirit. Gladly we bring to our church and its wide concerns a portion of this bounty. Well, I'd like to make a special introduction for Dr. Lauren Anzaldo. As you know, she's been the president. She's been an awesome contribution to our community, and I'm really looking forward to her message today.
I think we all know that our UUCP mission, which I love very much, when we adopted it several years back, it might have been 10 years ago or so at this point. Our mission is to celebrate diversity, strive for justice, and inspire love. Pride Month and the month of Juneteenth is an appropriate time to consider what it means for us as UUs to celebrate diversity. So today's talk is the first in a 3-part series of services exploring our UUCP mission statement. So you will see me up here again doing a service later on justice and love as well in the months to come. Today I'm going to establish some groundwork related to our understanding of diversity in our society and how it functions, identify recent attacks on the concept and practice of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and share ideas and examples of celebrating diversity. So let's face it, we live in a world full of diversity. There's really no escaping it. From the existence of 8.7 million species of plants and animals on our planet, including about 10,000 species of just birds alone. And I thought of Margaret McLaren when I put that little piece in there, that little factoid, to the 10,000 types of minerals that exist on Earth, to the variations in climates across this planet. In the words of Woody Guthrie, from the Golden Valley to the Diamond Deserts, from the Redwood Forests to the Gulf Stream waters, the non-human elements in our world are extremely diverse. Likewise, when we focus on the humans on this planet, we can easily identify mundane differences among people, like food preferences and favorite music, and partiality to cats over dogs. Then there are the more serious and impactful variances like skin color, native language, disability, and religious beliefs, to name a few. Among and between us, we are very different people. There's just no escaping diversity. However, the existence of diverse people with diverse experiences, appearances, practices, and opinions is not the same thing as respect for and inclusion of those people and their appearances and practices and opinions. The existence of diverse people among us in our neighborhoods, schools, grocery stores, health clinics, or at the voting booth does not even necessarily lead to mere tolerance of these folks. In fact, the opposite may be true if we're not careful. A Harvard political scientist conducted a test of what seeing more diversity in our everyday surroundings does to our political opinions. The study was reported in the book Why We're Polarized by Ezra Klein, which I read a couple years ago. Before starting the study, the researchers surveyed passengers at train stations in white suburbs around Boston. The researcher then recruited Spanish-speaking people to catch trains at these stations. This went on for 3 days with the intent to send a message to the other passengers that the Spanish-speaking population in that area was increasing. Now, granted, these people had just been recruited to stand there on the train platforms. Then the researcher again surveyed the train passengers and found that their political views had shifted, quote, noticeably rightward. According to the researcher, the mostly liberal Democratic passengers had come to endorse policies such as deportation of children of undocumented immigrants, which was a policy being advocated by Trump during his presidential campaign that was happening at the time of this study. We are probably all familiar with the phenomenon of white flight, or at least we've heard of it. White flight refers to the tendency of white residents to leave a neighborhood as black residents move into that neighborhood. Research indicates that white residents hold preconceived notions about racially mixed neighborhoods and predominantly black neighborhoods, and that these notions of neighborhood instability and disintegration lead them to not want to live in those neighborhoods. The percentage of black residents in the neighborhood may be as low as 10%. Residents who have the means to live elsewhere may choose to do so, and as a result, their departure may contribute to the instability of those neighborhoods, which may reinforce the preconceptions about those neighborhoods that drove the residents to leave in the first place. And you can see how this can become a vicious cycle. So white flight can also occur within schools. In this scenario, parents who perceive that a population of a school is shifting and who have the means to put their children in school elsewhere may choose to do so. A historic example of white flight from schools occurred in 1958 in Little Rock, Arkansas, the year after the Little Rock 9 integrated Central High School in that city. So we often hear, and hopefully we've all seen photos of that very historic moment of the brave efforts of the 9 black students who faced mobs of angry white residents and students, and who ultimately had to be escorted by members of the National Guard just to be able to somewhat safely receive an education in the 1957-58 school year there at Central High School in Little Rock. The piece of the story that we don't often get is that Arkansas Governor Orville Faubus closed all Little Rock high schools the following year rather than allow integration to continue. And the city of Little Rock wasn't alone in this. Virginia also closed schools to avoid having to integrate. Across the South, many white families had organized, quote, white citizens' councils, unquote, in the 1950s to fight integration. In the 1950s and 60s, these same families and others formed private schools in order to continue educating their children in a segregated setting, including right here in Pensacola. That also happened. The situation in Little Rock in 1958 and the extreme measures that some groups will go to in order to avoid interacting with people different than themselves bears similarity to our current situation. It's hard not to see a parallel there. Recently, various tactics have been taken to remove certain elements of history and literature from public schools at the K-12 level, as well as now in higher education, in order to prevent some folks from having to be exposed to other people and ideas. Those calling themselves parents' rights proponents argue that the representation of diverse people and experiences within our schools is immoral, does not reflect American values, and is hurting students. In true Orwellian fashion, they are supposedly the champions of liberty, and use that word very proudly. In their view, the equity and inclusion that has been fought for over many decades, from the Brown v. Board decision to the legalization of same-sex marriage, is a conspiratorial takeover by a so-called woke mob. We've all heard about that, right? In an effort to block this supposed takeover, Governor Ron DeSantis recently signed a bill banning public colleges and universities from spending money on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, known as DEI programs. The governor refers to DEI instead as discrimination, exclusion, and indoctrination. So let me be clear. When we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at colleges and universities, we are talking about offices that managed programs to diversify staff and promoted inclusivity for faculty and students. Here in Pensacola, the DEI office a few years ago hosted a speaking event at, talking about UWF, featuring the sculpture of the Four Spirits statue in Birmingham. So this statue, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it, it's beautiful. The statue is a memorial to the 4 girls who were killed in the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham in 1963. During this event that happened at UWF several years ago, the sculptor, a white woman, described the process she went through to decide what to sculpt to represent the tragic loss of these girls due to hatred and white supremacy in Birmingham at that time. These are the sorts of programs that these offices would run. The DEI office in Pensacola at UWF no longer exists, and staff with decades of experience are looking for work elsewhere because they can no longer do the work they were trained for and to which they have dedicated their careers. I can see where opponents of diversity and inclusion have a point. Building empathy toward diverse people does contribute to more favorable opinions toward those groups of people. One study of teenagers in 38 countries that had experienced large waves of immigration found a correlation between the views held toward immigrants by youth native to those countries and the composition of the classrooms in the schools those youth attended. The researcher noted, ethnically mixed classrooms do contribute to more favorable attitudes toward immigrants. Native youngsters in mixed classrooms had significantly higher levels of inclusive views than Native youngsters in all Native classrooms. That is, classrooms without immigrant students. Exposure to messages of diversity increases tolerance and acceptance of diversity, and may even help to close gaps between diverse groups, according to another study that was done at the University of Wisconsin at Madison. In this study, a public messaging campaign was launched on campus to normalize discussions about diversity. The project included a poster campaign featuring student testimonials about embracing diversity and a 4-minute video describing pro-diversity opinions among students. Follow-up 10 to 12 weeks later indicated that students who were exposed to the public messaging campaign reported more positive attitudes toward members of other groups and stronger endorsements of diversity. Students who are identified as marginalized, meaning non-white students or those who are Hispanic or who identified as a religion other than Christianity, were particularly impacted by this campaign. The researcher reported, "The students belonging to marginalized groups tell us that they have an enhanced sense of belonging. They are less anxious in interactions with students from other ethnic groups. They tell us that they're less and less the target of discrimination. They evaluate the classroom climate more positively, and they feel they are treated more respectfully by their classmates." So this public messaging campaign promoting diversity messages had tangible impacts on the lives of marginalized students at this university. Leaders in the civil rights movement knew about public messaging. They actively engaged in campaigns to humanize Black Americans. In many cases, these efforts, such as Freedom Summer and the Freedom Riders campaign, were focused on white young people who were more open and progressive in their views. Leaders in the gay rights movement used similar tactics and often urged their peers to come out of the closet in order to normalize gay and lesbian people in the eyes of their friends, family, coworkers, and neighbors, and to build support for their rights and safety in the broader society. Leaders in the disability rights movement also understood the importance of building support from the general population when they organized the Capitol Crawl in 1990. After a march to the U.S. Capitol building to protest the efforts within the U.S. Senate to stall and stop the Americans with Disabilities Act from passing, protesters with physical disabilities began throwing themselves out of their mobility devices and crawled up the 365 steps to the Capitol doors. The image of this demonstration was extremely moving and ultimately led to the passage of the ADA, which obviously we have in place today. So we can look at it this way. The presence of diversity in our society and the tolerance, support, acceptance, and inclusion that have grown over the last 50 to 70 years here in this country are a threat to some people. People for whom liberty and freedom are anathema, despite what they claim. Celebrating diversity is powerful. Celebrating diversity builds empathy and solidarity among people. When we recognize the humanity in each of us, we approach people who are different from us with curiosity, openness, and respect. We draw our circle wider, in the words of the song. We favor pluralism in our diversity. In the words of Reverend Dr. Jane Page of the UU Fellowship of Statesboro, Georgia, pluralism tries to encourage members of a society to accommodate their differences by avoiding extremism and engaging in good faith dialogue. Continuing in her talk on diversity and pluralism, Reverend Dr. Page described pluralism as looking through a series of windows. It's the same light, but the various windows seem to provide a very different understanding and meaning for people, she said. Many of us as UUs prefer to explore many windows and see the world through different perspectives. We may encounter diverse perspectives just in the course of our everyday lives, through interactions with neighbors, coworkers, and friends. But let's be honest, many of us do not spend a whole lot of time around people who don't look and think a lot like we do. In that case, we have to be more intentional about exposing ourselves to diverse people and experiences. There are myriad opportunities to do so. Some simple ideas include reading books or watching movies by or about people of color, people who are LGBTQ+, people who are living with disabilities, people who are immigrants or refugees, or people from a religious background different than our own, just to get started. Here in Pensacola, there are festivals, plays, art exhibitions, and events that celebrate diversity. Just in the last few weeks, Scott mentioned we had a busy couple of weeks. I've attended several events of this type. I went to events celebrating the Juneteenth holiday, also known as Emancipation Day or Freedom Day. The Juneteenth holiday marks the anniversary of the day on June 19, 1865, when the last group of enslaved people located in Galveston, Texas, were informed that they had been freed from slavery under President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which had been issued 1.5 years earlier. On Friday evening, just 2 days ago, I attended the 23rd annual Freedom is Not Free banquet hosted by the civil rights organization Movement for Change, which Scott and I have been involved with for about 18 years. During that banquet, I witnessed my first African libation ceremony. Practiced in the Yoruba and Igbo cultures of the African continent, the libation ceremony involves making an offering of water or other liquid to pay homage to the ancestors. According to an African libations officiant, during the libation, we honor the wisdom, love, and legacy of our ancestors and esteemed living elders. Some of us may be familiar with this type of ceremony by its colloquial phrase, pouring one out for the homies, when we pour a little beer or wine on the ground to memorialize someone who has passed. I hadn't realized the connection there. Yesterday, I attended the annual Pensa Pride Festival, and Chris mentioned it, ran into several of our church members there as well. There were musical and poetry performances, a puppet show, vendors, creators, a photo booth, and so many young people and families and elders out in the park yesterday. It was such a festive atmosphere and so beautiful to see a huge segment of our local community out celebrating Pride and just enjoying themselves and being who they are, despite the threats of hellfire and damnation from the protesters. They were definitely there. They just can't stay away. I'm looking forward to several other events that will also allow me to celebrate diversity, and I share them because I also encourage you to attend if you're able. My Ancestors' Wildest Dreams, an exhibit featuring the artwork of local African American artists, up now through Friday, July 14th at Artel Gallery, downtown Pensacola. They always have really good exhibits over there, and I know some of you have been there as well. Soil, an exhibition open until July 15th at the Alabama Contemporary Arts Center in downtown Mobile. The exhibit is subtitled Radical Empathy in the Act of Remembrance and is the work of the Mobile County Community Remembrance Project, a local grassroots program affiliated with the Equal Justice Initiative. Some of us are familiar with the Equal Justice Initiative and their work in Montgomery, Alabama, where they're based. Bias Inside Us, an interactive community engagement project that will be at the Pensacola Mess Hall for 1 month starting July 15th. This Smithsonian traveling exhibition raises awareness about the science and history of bias and what people can do about it. And last but not least, Stamped, an annual free film festival that, according to the website, is dedicated to providing a vibrant cultural experience in Pensacola by using the unique expression of films with a specific focus on the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community to foster awareness, inclusion, and diversity. And the festival this year runs from September 28th to October 1st. So these opportunities check several boxes for me. I enjoy them, I learn from them. My exposure to people who look different than me, who see the world differently, fosters deeper empathy and care in me for them as fellow human beings. I build relationships across differences, and I show my support for these folks and the moments that are important to them by putting my body where my mouth is and by walking the talk. These actions are within the reach of all of us.
Thanks, Lauren. I'd like to invite forward the choir. We're going to be singing When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. The words are in the teal hymnal, so look in front of you and look for a little blue book if you want to sing along.
Praise
The closing words are "We Shall Overcome" by Reverend Jonala John Stone. We shall overcome. When we can truly celebrate the diversity of contributions and talents offered by all people, we shall overcome hatred and prejudice and oppression. When we can truly extend our hands to one another in loving acceptance, we shall overcome the past that haunts us now. Living in peace and freedom, we shall overcome the wrongs that have happened and the debts left unpaid. Let us join together in that commitment to overcome. Let us say together, Amen. 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 Thank you.